While everyone's been focused on Bitcoin ripping and what the U.S. Treasury is doing, something more interesting has been happening. Michael Saylor continues to dilute MSTR common shareholders, and he hasn't bought Bitcoin in over 9 weeks. But despite this happening, the price of Bitcoin and MSTR is ripping. So what does this all mean? And really, I guess the next question is, who is really buying Bitcoin to fuel this move higher into about the 80K range? I think we're at like 78, 79 right now. We did hit 81K this morning, or kind of maybe last night. So who's out here buying is the real question. Now, just to get through the details here, let me pull up what Saylor did. So we all know every Monday morning, kind of wake up and we're all expecting Saylor to buy some Bitcoin. At least that was essentially what has been happening for years now. Every Monday morning, we would get the orange dots, then it turned into the green dots, and Saylor would buy mass amounts of Bitcoin. And it seemed as if there was only one real buyer in the market, which was Strategy. Again, when I say Michael Saylor, I'm usually just meaning Strategy. And when I say Strategy, everyone essentially just thinks of Michael Saylor. And for a long time, the case was made that, hey, Strategy is the buyer of last resort. They're the ones that are driving the Bitcoin price. But we have seen some interesting kind of counter signals to that very idea. And Saylor and Phong Lee, the CEO of Strategy, came out and been like multiple clips saying, hey, look, we've bought in Bitcoin and the price is dumped. And then there's times when we've sold Bitcoin and the price is ripped, which is just further confirming the idea that Strategy isn't really in control of the Bitcoin price, even though they're one of the biggest Bitcoin treasury holders in the space. They have 840,000 Bitcoin, constantly buying Bitcoin. A lot of people attribute the price gains we've seen to Strategy just buying Bitcoin. There is a case to be made that maybe, Wall Street's counter trading Strategy. Maybe Wall Street is hunting Strategy. Maybe they want to make an example of Strategy and trying to liquidate Strategy and their Bitcoin holdings. Though, if you look at the math, there's no possible way that they could actually liquidate Strategy unless Bitcoin got to like, what was it, 8K for like 2 years, which it's not going to happen. Even the bears in the chat will not even come close to being that bearish. But what we've seen in the last couple of weeks is pretty interesting. So again, we've been covering this saga. I've made the case for why Saylor is doing this. So again, on Monday, we got the announcement. Strategy increased its USD reserves to $5.1 billion, established additional USD cash of $1.59 billion, and repurchased $136 million of Stretch. As of 8/23/26, Strategy holds roughly 4% of total Bitcoin supply and has 0% net leverage. That last part is really, I think, the unsung hero here. But let's go into the filing here because that's where you get all the information. So they sold 18.2 MSTR common stock. So this is a way bigger dilution if you're more of a MSTR bear. But more importantly, no Bitcoin sold. So for the last, I believe, 9 weeks, well, no, the last 2 weeks in particular, Strategy's been able to raise cash without selling Bitcoin. And further, we haven't seen a Bitcoin buy from Strategy in about 2 months, a little over 2 months, which is really interesting just looking at the price action. Now, you get more information when you look at the Strategy dashboard here. And something I think very impressive happened with this one particular buy. So you can see $5.1 billion USD reserve, 1.58 in cash, and now they have 3.9 years of USD on hand that they can sell for the STR preferred stock. If you remember correctly, if you can remember what we talked about last week, Strategy had 2.9 years. So with this single move, they have now almost 4 years of cash on hand. So it looks as if they most likely won't have to ever sell Bitcoin. Oh, I'm not going to say ever, but it looks like for the short to medium term, they're not going to have to sell any Bitcoin. And you can see in the MSTR stock price and in the Stretch price that it is making investors feel, I would say, a little safer in those positions. Maybe Saylor has regained his trust, the trust of the investors. Now, remember, the reason that strategy is doing this is, I think, put bluntly, they want to get included in the S&P 500. And remember the credit rating that they got, I believe it was a B+. They said a few specific things, and ever since that particular credit rating, strategy has done everything in their power to try to raise their credit rating out of that B+ range, which is really not the best. Hey, look, I know when we got grades in school, B+ is cool. At least for me, a B+, I was happy. It's not the best credit rating, okay? But they said a few things in particular. One, they didn't really look at Bitcoin as a productive asset. They basically were counting that 840,000 plus Bitcoin on Strategy's balance sheet as a non-asset, so a big old fat zero on their asset sheet. Second, they wanted to make sure that they aren't the only ones that are in the market. Third, obviously, if they sold Bitcoin, they wanted to make sure it wasn't crashing Bitcoin. That's really why they considered it a non-productive asset. And they also wanted to see that if they were creating yield, it was from their company, which, depending how you look at this, that's probably their biggest knock on. Well, as we saw, when Saylor did do the initial $2 million sale, a lot of people attribute it to that was the reason that Bitcoin crashed. But when you look at the numbers, that $2 million sale from Strategy was actually a non-factor in the total liquidity that is traded. So that really wasn't the reason. But as we know, or rather, as we like to talk, what drives price? Does narrative drive price, or does the price go up then drive the narrative as to why we saw the movement in Bitcoin, or the opposite? If the price dumps, do we look for a narrative, or does the narrative precede the price movement? And I think in that particular circumstance where Saylor sold $2 million, I think that was one of those moments where we saw the price do something and then we back rationalize the narrative to make sense of it. Humans like to see patterns. We like to try to understand what's going on. Well, that was completely invalidated a couple of weeks later when they sold $32 million of Bitcoin and the price went up. So we have a few data points to prove that, look, Saylor, or Strategy, better put, isn't the one that's driving the Bitcoin price. And this is why I think this is actually a good thing. Not in the same sense that everyone is saying, like, oh, like I just laid out, that's what Strategy is doing is to raise their credit rating to get into the S&P 500. What we're seeing right now, the reason they are adding cash reserves is to basically gain trust back from the investors and get the STRC back to par. Of course, raise the common stock prices. I'm not framing this, or I'm not even factoring in that idea that what Saylor is doing is good for MSTR. Now, I don't believe that MSTR is going to crash, or there's a real existential concern for the stockholders of MSTR, or even the stretch holders. And I'll bring up the charts for you guys. I in my opinion, I'm not even factoring in what this is doing to Saylor's stock. To me, that's besides the point. What I think is the most interesting aspect of this is that Saylor hasn't bought Bitcoin in a long time. And I know there's this idea that Strategy is the one that's driving the Bitcoin price, but the fact we haven't seen Strategy buy any Bitcoin, again, simple supply-demand economics, if there's more buyers of Bitcoin, then the price of Bitcoin has to go up. Well, Strategy hasn't done that. And guess what? The price went from 62K to as high as 81K without any Strategy buys underlying that. So two things are playing out here. One, they are obviously breaking that narrative that Strategy controls the price. But two, it is showing for the S&P 500 and the credit rating agencies that, yeah, actually Strategy isn't the sole driver of Bitcoin. And further, there is someone else or multiple entities in the market. And I think that's the biggest signal that we are seeing. And not that many people are talking about this. The fact we are seeing the price of Bitcoin rip without Strategy buying just goes to show there is a large demand by some whales out there. And it could simply just be the whales. I've been showing you the on-chain metrics that the whales are buying in bulk. We're seeing the ETF inflows come back online. I actually have a good clip from Eric Balkunis of Bloomberg talking about the ETF that I'm going to play in a minute. And then further, we have seen that there is a general interest coming from these institutions. Again, Wall Street, the banks, a lot of hedge funds are all either dipping their toes into Bitcoin, creating Bitcoin products, or they're out here shilling Bitcoin. Remember, last week, we made the case, hey, look, very interesting and coincidental timing that BlackRock drops a report, the first Bitcoin report they've dropped in weeks, in months, actually, and the Bitcoin price rips. Now, obviously, maybe I'm Charlie Dang and I'm connecting too many dots here. I think the biggest factor for the Bitcoin price to rip was exactly what the Treasury's been doing, which is something I've been saying. But it goes to show that there is interest in Bitcoin, and it's not just solely Michael Saylor. So hopefully at the tail end of this bear market, we can finally put a few narratives to rest, which is strategy doesn't control the Bitcoin price. Well, further, for a lot of people, no one actually controls the Bitcoin price. There is no single entity controlling the Bitcoin price. Actually, one side point, did you guys see that Jane Street last week, or maybe a few weeks ago, announced that they had their worst quarter ever? Now, why am I bringing this up? Because earlier this year and towards the tail end of last year, there was a pretty big rumor going around, a lot of speculation going around that Jane Street was the one that was essentially manipulating the Bitcoin price, that they were the ones that were doing the 10 a.m. slam every morning, that once the U.S. markets opened up, we would get a huge red candle at exactly the same time. And we were all attributing that to Jane Street. And then they got caught, and literally they got in a court case for something very similar. And so they had to turn off all their algo manipulation schemes. And then the price of Bitcoin just started to kind of relax and stabilize. And then, of course, now it pumped. Well, you know, interesting connection. Again, it seemed like Jane Street had their worst quarter ever. I don't know. Maybe they were getting some of their profits from the naked shorts on Bitcoin, from their shorting algo trading of Bitcoin. Anyways, say all that to say it does seem as if there is, how do I say it, some factors here that want you to believe that strategy is in control of the price, but the opposite side, that there are headhunters out there that want to and actually are trying to make the narrative and counter trade strategy, whatever strategy is doing. And that's probably the biggest how do I say it, fault maybe here. This is probably better yet, this is probably the biggest obstacle for Saylor, is that he's doing everything so public. So, you know, the algo traders, the counter traders, they can essentially make their bets knowing what strategy is going to do. And they are one of the biggest whales. And again, you got to keep in mind the idea, what drives price? Does narrative drive price, or does price do something and then we back rationalize a narrative? I think I would argue the latter, that the Bitcoin price does what it does, and then we back rationalize a narrative to make sense about what happened with the Bitcoin price. I mean, I do it all the time. I think we all do it. I think it might be human nature. And when you think about how these strategy announcements work, it's not that he is telegraphing what he's going to do. He's actually telling you what he did the week before. But once we hear the news story, that's when we start to see the narrative build. And I've pointed this out a few times in the past, especially when we saw that $2 million strategy Bitcoin sale. The price didn't move until the market heard that strategy sold. So if you go back on the chart and you line up the dates, strategy sold $2 million the week prior. And then when we heard about it on Monday, the price tanked. Now, a lot of people were attributing that to, oh, strategy sold Bitcoin, that's why the price went down. And it's like, well, no, if you look at how this played out, strategy was actually selling Bitcoin and the price didn't do anything. And then only once we found out that strategy sold Bitcoin did the price tank, which does make you think that there is someone out there trying to headhunt strategy, trying to force a liquidation, or trying to pin things on strategy's movements. And I mean, we could all speculate and venture a guess here. It's probably Wall Street. Who else has the capital to do that? But now we're seeing that is not the case at all. Strategy is not even buying Bitcoin, and Bitcoin's ripping. It's had its best week in what, over a year without a strategy buy. So someone else is in the market buying. Yes, we can attribute that to the ETFs. Yes, we can attribute that to whales. But I would also argue that, as I've been making the case, this is kind of a new era. We're in a new phase. And I'm guessing that there is another huge entity in the space. And it might not even just be simply in the US. This could be someone, another nation state. This could be other corporations in other countries. The race to acquire Bitcoin is just starting to heat up. And again, I don't know if I brought this up last week. Sorry, I'm getting, price is not a distraction, but I get distracted by the chat. Dang, I got distracted. I completely forgot what I was going to say. What was I going to say? I don't know. Anyways, it'll come back to me. Let's look at the price. Let's look at the charts here. All right. So interesting stuff going on. Here is strategy, the MSTR common stock. As you can see, it's up 35% since Bitcoin is up, what, 24%, I believe? About 26. Okay, so about 26%, or maybe a little lower. Currently, Bitcoin's at 79. So we are seeing a few things play out. There has been a lot of conversation, and I've been one of the it's the plebs opti. Tommy, dude, you got to lay off the hopium, bro. There has been a huge conversation about Bitcoin treasury companies in the space in the last year. I think obviously because it's been a bear market, and further because it's been a brutal bear market for Bitcoin treasuries. And actually, I got a treat for you guys today. I am going to have Matt Cole come in from Strive, and he's been doing some really good tweets. So we'll flesh out this conversation a little more later on in the show, actually at the tail end of the show. But there has been a huge conversation around the role, or even further for some more cynical Bitcoiners, whether there even is a reason for Bitcoin treasury companies. But as we've seen in this last week, that, and I think this is probably a better framing for why you might want to invest in a treasury company. It's simply, as we've heard strategy say all the time, and I think a lot of Bitcoin treasury guys say it as well, it's just amplified Bitcoin. Or put another way, and not as maybe a little more cynical and probably more direct, it's just a leverage Bitcoin play. And so MSTR strategy is doing exactly what we thought it would do. And strategy has made a lot of charts on this, that when Bitcoin makes a move, MSTR, the common stock, does make a stronger move. It is kind of a leverage Bitcoin play. It is amplified Bitcoin gains. And hey, this week, or last week, and now this week, we are seeing that phenomenon play out exactly as has been stated. Bitcoin's up 26%, MSTR is up about 34%. So yeah, it's not like an outsized gain. You know, it's not something crazy where Bitcoin's up 25% and MSTR is 50%. But hey, it is driving MSTR higher as Bitcoin goes higher, or rather, it is getting more gains as Bitcoin goes higher. So what is this telling me in terms of the MSTR investors? Well, one, I think if we are out of this bear market, then I think MSTR is probably already bottomed, and that under $100 MSTR price was probably a very good buy. And now as Bitcoin continues to run, MSTR might be making a move to all-time highs, which was what, above $500. Now, I think the more interesting play here, or rather the more interesting angle, is what's going on with Stretch. Stretch has had, pun intended, a bad stretch for the last couple of months, right? We've been covering it. But look, guys, it's almost back up to par, which is very interesting to watch. It's currently at $97.16, or yeah, 16 cents. And as we can see, it dropped in May. So I don't know, a few months, what? About 3 months. So it's been under par for about 3 months. Finally, it's climbing back up towards that $100 par stretch number where they can actually buy more Bitcoin. And I think this is the more interesting conversation here. I'm too dumb. I just stick to Bitcoin. Dude, I literally said that this morning. I literally said that exact thing this morning. It was actually Luke that brought this to my attention. I think I said this last week. What is very interesting about what strategy is doing right now, obviously, if you're an MSTR holder, you might have some concern about the MSTR dilution. I did see a lot of people saying that strategy changed their Bitcoin per share metric on the strategy website, and in fact, MSTR shareholders are being diluted in Bitcoin per share terms. But if you've been holding strategy for 4 years, 5, 6 years, like, you're up. You really don't care. I would say you're like, whatever. I'm gaining fiat on this that I can convert to more Bitcoin. So that Bitcoin per share dilution number, if you've been a long-term holder, is probably not a factor, because they have in fact increased Bitcoin per share year over year. Now, if you're you just bought Bitcoin at the 10-10 top, maybe you have a little more concern. But again, if you're buying MSTR, you're probably in it for the long run. But Luke, again, brought this up to my attention that we might be seeing a new era in what strategy is doing, where at least from the data points we've seen in the last 2 months, 9 weeks or so, it seems as if strategy is doing everything they can, not only to get into the S&P 500 and not only to raise their Bitcoin credit, but of course, get that stretch back to $100 and that par number. And with that comes, we might be seeing a new era where strategy doesn't just outright buy Bitcoin as they've been doing for 4 years, or 2020, 6 years, I guess, right? Was it 2020 when Saylor bought Bitcoin for the first time? I believe so. We might only be seeing strategy buy Bitcoin through that stretch par number. Hence why they're doing everything to try to get it back to par. And if that is what is going on, obviously I'm not in the shareholder meetings. I can only really get this information like you can on Twitter. It would make sense why they are so hyper-focused on stretch. And obviously, as we've seen, so hyper-focused on this digital credit idea, because that's how they're probably going to continue to get more Bitcoin moving forward, is simply through that stretch. Once it gets up $100 and above, that's when they'll buy Bitcoin. So if that is the case, and we no longer are going to see strategy raise a bunch of money and buy Bitcoin, which I could be completely wrong about this, or me and Luke can be completely wrong about this, but it is interesting that is kind of what we're seeing play out. Now, obviously, every once in a while, they might raise more money and buy Bitcoin, but it does seem like that is the focus right now for strategy, that they're just going to use stretch to buy more Bitcoin, and that's kind of how the company is going to work moving forward. So it is very interesting that stretch is almost back to par at $97. It got beat up for a little bit, got under to 72 for a little bit. Now you can see investors are starting to feel a little more confident. They're starting to trust strategy a little more. They're starting to trust stretch a lot more than they did 2 months ago. And it's almost back to par. So if the Bitcoin price continues to move, like if we have a solid move this week, I think we might see stretch get back to that $100 par number. And if we do, that's going to be not only a huge milestone for strategy, but I think that's going to be a huge signal to a lot of people that, oh, wow, okay, the stretch product is a real thing. Further, digital credit is a real idea. These, 11-ish% returns is insane, and you can't get it anywhere else. And now we know for a fact that there is some durability in these products. Now, again, I'm not a MSTR or STRC bag holder. I never invested in a Bitcoin treasury company, but there obviously is a huge amount of interest for these products, and they are buying Bitcoin. And I'm a simple supply demand economics kind of guy. I want to see more people buying Bitcoin because, hey, I like seeing number go up. Okay. I love number go up. I am a number go up maxi. Now, I love everything else, but number go up's fun. All right. So it is very interesting that Bitcoin is ripping without Saylor. And again, as I mentioned, it's playing out in a very positive way for Bitcoin. We need this to happen. We want this to happen. We want to see Bitcoin go up because of more than one person buying Bitcoin, more than one giant entity buying Bitcoin. And that does kind of lead me to what my kind of second idea of all of this is. There's been a huge argument over Bitcoin being centralized, decentralized. Is Bitcoin still decentralized? Is Wall Street a good thing in Bitcoin? Is Wall Street centralizing Bitcoin? You know, was Saylor a net positive for Bitcoin? Like, it's been a brutal bear market where even Saylor is getting heat here. You know, I know Bitcoiners love to slay their heroes, and it's tough being a Bitcoin prophet because once things go bad, they metaphorically, you know, are coming for your head on the chopping block. But now we're seeing, well, in fact, strategy isn't the one in control of the Bitcoin price. One, we've seen multiple examples of it, whether they sell or they buy, the price does exactly the opposite of what you would think if they were the ones that are in control of the Bitcoin price. And two, if strategy is not the one that is pushing the price up, then who is? Who's buying Bitcoin right now? Again, I've shown you charts of last week. I've seen a couple of new charts. Maybe I'll cover some on-chain metrics for you guys tomorrow. We're seeing the whales are buying. We're seeing there is a lot of interest coming from the Bitcoin ETFs, particularly from BlackRock. Maybe Larry Fink is the employee of the month again. You know, drops a report, 80% of the ETF inflows last week, that was roughly like $1.5 billion came from the BlackRock IBIT ETF, Bitcoin ETF. But I'd venture to guess that there's someone else out there. There's someone else lurking in the shadows that is buying Bitcoin. And if that's the case, bear market's over. I'm like, I know I said about 89% yesterday. I think I might be higher. I can just confidently say that I'm around 90% assured that the Bitcoin price isn't going to drop, you know, into, actually, I can say like, well, I guess nothing's guaranteed. I'll stick to it. 90% we don't get under 60K. Now, that 10% is not me saying, oh, the 10% chance that we get under 60K. It's more on the idea of, I'm looking at it as more of like a fractal. If you look at the end of the 2022 bear market, particularly at the very end of 2022 and the beginning of 2023, we saw a very similar price pattern play out where it, you know, ripped like 25, 30% off the bottom. And then it kind of, you know, toppled over a little bit, did a dip. It went up a little higher. And then we saw about a 25% correction. And so I'm kind of thinking that that might be where we're playing out. And if that does play out, then that would probably mean that the Bitcoin price would go down into about the mid 60s. So not under 60K, not making a new low, but there still might be one more correction before we really take off into the next level. So what we saw this morning is very interesting. The fact that we got up to about 81K, even though it was just a kiss, you know, we just kind of waked up. It's still very interesting because as I've been mentioning to you guys all week, and I think even Nico might have mentioned it on Friday, we are seeing a sell wall from about 80 to 83K. And what is most interesting about it, which I, again, mentioned yesterday, it looks like a lot of those sell orders are long, like they're old. They're about 100 days old on some of the big ones. So the fact we waked up to 81K is making me think a few things. One, obviously, people may be pulling those sell walls. They're like, I'm not trying to get liquidated here. I actually don't want to sell that Bitcoin here. And further, I want to spook the markets. I want people to look at that 81 or that 80 to 83K level and get scared and be like, okay, maybe I need to short. And they sweep that liquidity and then they pull their sell orders and we start ripping. But another little factor I think is very interesting. It's probably best in smash buying. We can only hope, right? And not the Clarity will launch us to 90 in September. Bro, you lay off the hopium. I don't think Clarity is passing. But this does make my point that if we do break 83K, like I think we're gonna teleport to 90 very quickly. But as we saw, what was it, Thursday, We saw a huge, literally the biggest short squeeze. I believe it's ever, right? But we saw the mother of all short squeezes on Thursday of last week. So you sweep the short liquidity, Bitcoin pumps up. Now, what would the market makers want to do then? I mean, it's not too big of a guess to be like, well, maybe they want to sweep the long liquidity one more time. We drop back down. They maybe do this a few times, or maybe they're like, all right, final rip. Let's see if we got it. Final clip, final shot in the clip here. Let's sweep the liquidity, the long liquidity here. Price goes back down. And then you just mega long once everyone's out of cash. So that's why I'm kind of in that 10% factor that we might get one correction here, or rather, it's almost guaranteed we're going to get a correction. It's just more of how big will the correction happen. Again, Bitcoin price doesn't just go up and to the right. It looks like that when you zoom out, but in the day-to-day, it's, squiggly. It goes up, it pulls back. It goes up, it pulls back. Now, how big are these moves going to be? Obviously, we won't know until after the fact, but I think there's still a pretty good chance that we're going to see some kind of correction here. Is it oversold? If you're looking at the RSI, you could make the case that maybe we're oversold. I know I saw a lot of people saying that, like, oh, we passed 85 on the RSI chart, like it's oversold. Well, usually, Bitcoin can be oversold longer than your shorts can withstand. So I don't think we're in oversold territory yet. I think Bitcoin still has it could still potentially make a bigger move up. But would I be leverage trading right now? Probably. It's actually not a probably. It's not. I'm not leverage trading. I don't leverage trade. Again, I'm too dumb to leverage trade. I am too dumb to buy anything other than Bitcoin. I just buy spot Bitcoin. I take it into cold storage and I chill. That's how I do it. It makes my life that much easier. As I think the kind of idea is spreading more and more. And I don't want to say I was the first one to say it, but I've definitely been a huge proponent of this idea that I think for the most part, most people should just buy Bitcoin and go live their lives. Now, it's not the best advice for a channel that's built on, trying to keep you entertained and keep you and continue to garner views. But for most people, just buy Bitcoin, learn to secure it, go live your life, be more profitable, get more cash, and just continue to do this process. Now, most of us become obsessed, and this is all we think about. We make our entire identity about Bitcoin. Even though it's my job, my entire identity isn't even about Bitcoin. But hey, who am I? I'm just a guy. So we could see a couple of corrections here. Actually, I was saying this morning. It's like maybe this week it's kind of bullish. Next week we get kind of a tiny correction. The following week we get a little more pumpy, and then that would be about the third week from now. We maybe get the final correction here. If that 2022, beginning of 2023 fractal plays out, that's kind of where my mind is going. So I wouldn't be freaking out if we get a correction, though. Of course, the bears are going to be taking a victory lap. I don't think this is a dead cat rally or a dead cat bounce or a suckers rally. I think the bull run started earlier than everyone expected. So I'm super bullish that strategy is not buying Bitcoin and the price is ripping. I think this is great. This is healthy for Bitcoin price. This is healthy for the industry. This is healthy for the idea of, is Bitcoin too centralized, and was Wall Street a centralizing force in Bitcoin? Well, that story is not going to be finished for a while. But we know for a fact that strategy is not the ones that are driving the Bitcoin price. Someone else is lurking. Some other monster is lurking in the shadows right now. And it's making me feel bullish. Opti's just an innocent man. I am just a pretty face. Well, actually, I have a you know what they say? It's like you have a face for radio, or the opposite, you have a voice for radio. I have neither. I don't know how I got stuck with this job. All right. I don't know why you guys show up. No, I know, because you're the bros. Because I'm funny and handsome and entertaining. And maybe I know a little bit about Bitcoin. I mean, I've been doing it for almost like a decade now, dude. I'm a boomer. I'm a Bitcoin unk, dog. It's so over for me. Anyways, let's keep it moving. Enough rambling. I do have, like I said, Eric Balchunas. He is the senior ETF. I forget what executive ETF director, whatever at Bloomberg. He did some pretty good coverage on Bitcoin, and I'm really going to be talking more about how I think the media coverage this cycle is going to be very, very bullish for us. And then, like I said, Matt Cole from Strive is going to be here in about 15 minutes. So let me whip through these, and we'll keep the show going. I'll be right back. Here's the part that nobody says out loud. Buying Bitcoin on an exchange and leaving it there isn't buying Bitcoin. It's buying an IOU. And the last decade has been a masterclass in what happens when those exchanges don't deliver on their promises.
Bitcoin Well is a self-custody Bitcoin platform. That means that when you buy Bitcoin, it goes straight to your self-custody Bitcoin wallet. You actually own it from the very first transaction. They're available both in the United States and Canada. Pricing is transparent, straightforward, and no nonsense. And if you're buying a larger amount of Bitcoin, Bitcoin Well Infinite gives you concierge-level support through a dedicated executive Bitcoin advisor, premium help for when it actually matters.
You can also stack a little extra through the referral and wishing well rewards. A nice bonus on top of the owning your own Bitcoin thing. So go to bitcoinwell.com/simply and sign up for the Bitcoin Well portal today and buy Bitcoin you actually own. Paper burns, paper floods, paper fades. If your seed phrase is written on paper, it's not really backed up. It's waiting to disappear. Stampseed's DIY kit lets you hammer your seed words directly into commercial grade titanium. Fireproof, crush-proof, waterproof, and permanent. Once your words are in the metal, they aren't going anywhere. Use code SIMPLY at stampseed.com for 15% off anything in the store. That's stampseed.com, code SIMPLY. You guys crack me up in the chat. My boys in the chat. All right. The current Bitcoin price is 78,900. Yo, guys, 78,9990. What if we get the correction right now? All right. Maybe my 3-week time frame is happening quicker. Anyways, we are at a 37.4% discount from all-time high. Honestly, that feels pretty good. Instead of saying 50% off, it's only 37. Guys, it's what's a 37% discount between friends? Honestly, it's still a good discount. It's just less. It feels good. Anyways, market cap 1.59 trillion. The block height for real Bitcoin is 964,033. I repeat, 964,033. All right, guys. So getting to 1 Bitcoin is not worth it. Yeah, you need to get to as many Bitcoins as possible. Wait, is this still a family-friendly show when it's just Opti? Can I get a little wilder on my jokes? My boy Ben, the Bitcoin wine guy, did a funny tweet, but my response was even funnier. Connecting Bitcoin and go. Anyways, I can't say it. It's a family show. Eric Balchunas, he's been covering the Bitcoin ETFs. I would say very well. I'm actually pretty fond of Eric Balchunas as a Bitcoiner, even though I don't know if he's necessarily a Bitcoiner, but I think he's a good example of what a TradFi investor or TradFi analyst thinks about Bitcoin. He's pretty bullish on the ETF only because it's performed so well. I think he's a Bitcoiner, though. I have a bunch of friends that are like, he's a bear, dude. And I'm like, I don't think so. I think he's actually bullish on Bitcoin. He probably just owns the Bitcoin ETF. He's obviously like the senior ETF advisor at Bloomberg. But I've seen a trend in the last few weeks. And I know I've joked about this in the past, that if these corporate press, corporate news channels get better at doing media coverage. I think I started with Joe Kernan, and then it was Charles Payne, and now we have Eric Balchunas. I'm like, man, if these news anchors get better, I might not have a job, because they're starting to become Bitcoiners, and they're getting bullish, and they have the very fancy sets. And I'm like, their coverage has been pretty good. Like, I'm not even mad. I'm like, yeah, they're pretty spot on. The coverage that we've seen coming out of Bloomberg, CNBC, it's like, it's honestly pretty solid advice. Or rather, maybe pretty solid analysis. Now, obviously, there's still the bears, there's still the fiat maxis, and there are people that hate Bitcoin that, you know, are respected and get the sound bites on the channels. But when you get a bullish sound clip coming from Bloomberg recently, it's like, it's almost sounding like, you know, Bitcoin content. I'm just like, wow, we really are saturating everything. But I think there's a bigger story to be had here. So let me play the clip and then I'll kind of expand on that a little bit. So here's Eric Balchunas, senior ETF advisor, I believe, at Bloomberg.
Hone in on this sort of gold Bitcoin debasement trade. So we saw gold is having a really big week last week. GLD was second on the leaderboard. But look at Bitcoin. You know, Bitcoin has been in the doghouse. It's been a rough time. This is flows into Bitcoin ETFs. These are the good old days, I call them. This is in October. Then all the OGs sold. That's the silent IPO. Went from $125,000 pretty quickly down 50%. That's nasty. Then we had what I call the cruel summer. Even if you thought it would come up, it had a couple head fakes, but it just was a bad summer. But look at this. That's almost 2 billion. That's the biggest week since the good old days. And obviously this sort of Becent treasury buying is a very big catalyst for Bitcoin. Whether it's enough to get it out and back to the high market had, we'll see, Scarlett, but a good sign for Bitcoin hodlers.
Yeah, definitely. We'll see if this is an anomaly or the start of something new. Eric, thank you so much.
Yo, it's hodler, right? Hodlers? Come on, Eric. It's a hodler. Like toddler. All right. Anyways, I just hate how that sounds. Hodler. It seems like it always reminds me of yodeling. I'm like, dude, it's so gross. All right. Anyways. Why do I find this clip so interesting? Not only is it like good coverage, like he's on point. You know, this is the best, and obviously it's ETF, it's Bitcoin exposure, it's paper Bitcoin, yada, yada, yada. What I find the most interesting is not that they're talking about Bitcoin. We've seen this play out for a long time, but that they are doing good coverage on Bitcoin. Now, that in and of itself is not, you know, that big of an insight. But when you think about who watches this, you can start to see that the tide is shifting. That if there is a lot of good coverage coming from CNBC, Fox News, Bloomberg, a lot of good reports coming out of the Wall Street hedge fund institutions and the banks, it is starting to remind me of something we used to say in Bitcoin a long time, which is most people need multiple touch points. And now if we're starting to see just great coverage on, you know, the mainstream media, the corporate press, it's a totally different ballpark than we were in the past. Because anytime Bitcoin was talked about, there might have been like one or two segments, and it usually came from like someone in the industry. It's like, you know, Brian Armstrong or someone shilling some kind of crypto garbage. That was the only good coverage you would get on corporate press. Now we're seeing the analysts, the host of these shows, the reoccurring experts on those shows talk very positively about Bitcoin. And now if you know anything about like persuasion, people don't buy things from people they don't trust. And these people on these shows, these analysts, these hosts, you know, Joe Kernan, Charles Payne, Eric Balchunas, they've built up the reputation for a long time. And once they start being favorable and saying positive things about Bitcoin, as a viewer, as someone that has basically built trust in their analysis, that makes them have, you know, very positive touch points on Bitcoin. And that's when they start going in and realizing, oh, wow, maybe I should be going in force. Now, there is one, obviously, exception to this, which is, of course, Kramer. Yo, we didn't bring it up on the show, but yo, shouts out to Kramer. Literally says he sells his Bitcoin Bitcoin pumped 25% like 2 days later. Actually, I had a funny story this weekend. I was chilling on Friday at my parents' house, and my buddy calls me, and he's like, "Yo, I got really bad news." I'm like, "Okay, like what's going on?" He's like, "No, dude, this is horrible news." I'm like, "All right, like what do you mean? Like what's going on? You know, dude, like what did you do in your life, dude? Like what happened? Did you ruin your life?" And he's like, "No, dude, check your text message." And it was Kramer, I guess, basically saying like he's bullish on Bitcoin. And we're both like, "No, there goes that rally. Uh-oh, we are going back down. We are never going to kiss 80K." But man, Kramer is just literally the inverse. Kramer is just undefeated. You need that balance. But anyways, the last point, and it's really the first point, why I find this so interesting is if we're moving forward in a era where the corporate press is saying very positive things about Bitcoin instead of just saying all the negative FUD lines about Bitcoin, it's going to be a massive bull run. And I'm actually really happy that I have Matt Cole on, because I was telling you yesterday that I might have covered Matt Cole's thread or tweet about why he thinks it's going to be an extremely bullish bull run. But it just so happened that our scheduler just got him on the show. So I'm super excited because that's what we're going to be talking about in a minute. I actually have a few things. One, the case for why it's going to be a huge bull run, kind of the macro backdrop. And then, of course, we'll talk about the place for Bitcoin treasuries in portfolios. We've seen a lot of things play out in the last, I would say, year or so, maybe year and a half. Trump come out pro-Bitcoin, essentially starting the nation state race for Bitcoin accumulation. Obviously, Saylor launching digital credit, or further, the Bitcoin treasury space itself. We've seen the ETFs launch. We've seen Wall Street banks get bullish on Bitcoin. We're seeing other banks start to launch Bitcoin custody products. We're seeing favorable coverage on Bitcoin. We've had a hard fork. We've had wallet exploits. It's like it's been a crazy year and a half in Bitcoin land. You know, we got an all-time high. We got a 50% correction. And Bitcoin is literally like, is it Princess Diary? It just keeps getting shot, and he's just like, it's only a scratch. It's only a scratch. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to hit the break, and hopefully Matt Cole comes in by the time the breaks are done, because I don't want to stretch this out, and I don't want him waiting on the ad break. So I'll be right back, and hopefully he pops in during this break.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, Ledin. Here's something most Bitcoin holders never figure out until it's too late. You're sitting on wealth you can't touch without selling. Ledin fixes that. Bitcoin-backed loans. You keep your stack, you get cash. And they just introduced their lowest rates ever. No complexity, no fine print. The larger the loan, the lower the rate. These new rates apply to all new loans, refinances, and renewals. You'll see all the rates up front before you apply. The new, lower rates come with Ledin's gold standard protection. Your Bitcoin remains custodied and is never lent out for interest. Perfect 8-year track record of keeping clients' assets safe. Auto top-ups, LTV alerts, and partial repayments to keep you in control. Repay whenever you want with zero penalties or monthly payments. Ledin's perfect $10 billion track record through every market cycle in the last 8 years speaks for itself. Don't choose between a great rate and the safety of your Bitcoin. Get both at Ledin. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Keet. If you own Bitcoin, the next question is how you actually protect it. Keet takes a different approach to self-custody. It uses a 2 of 3 setup with keys split between your phone, your Keet hardware wallet device, and block servers. You only need 2 keys to authorize a transaction. So losing one doesn't mean losing your Bitcoin. And Block only has 1 key, so they can't move your Bitcoin on their own. There's also no seed phrase to write down, hide somewhere, somewhere and hope nobody ever finds it. Recovery is built in, so if you lose your phone, replace a device, or something happens years down the road, you have a path back to your Bitcoin. And the BitKey hardware wallet now lets you verify what you're actually signing directly on the screen. So instead of blindly trusting an address, you can confirm the real destination on BitKey itself. It's self-custody designed around what actually happens in real life, from lost devices and mistakes to long-term ownership and inheritance. Get yourself a BitKey today and use promo code SIMPLY to get 10% off your new BitKey. I want to give a shout out to our partner, HIVE Digital Technologies. Fueled by clean energy across 3 continents, HIVE runs dual engines, Bitcoin mining and AI compute. Their AI platform is ranked #1 in the world for network performance, and it's doing something bigger than compute. It's accelerating human discovery, the science, the breakthroughs, pushing humanity further and faster. Listed on the NASDAQ with the ticker HIVE. Catch the latest buzz at HIVE Digital Tech on X or hivedigitaltech.com.
Sovereignty isn't just about your money. It's about your communications too. When the grid goes down, cell towers can fail. Hurricanes, cyber attacks, blackouts, most people go dark. Satellite phones don't rely on local infrastructure. With Iridium, 77 satellites in orbit, you can stay connected across the U.S., even offshore. If you hold your own Bitcoin keys, you should hold your own comms too. Sat123 also has Starlink, battery backups, Faraday bags for your hardware wallets, and everything you need to build your own off-grid Bitcoin citadel. Go to sat123.com/simply and use promo code SIMPLY for 15% off anything in the store. All right, guys. Well, it looks like I'm alone today. All right. Maybe he'll pop in. Let me see if I got a confirmation on this, but I was told we had Matt Cole on today. Yeah. Or no. I don't know. That's tomorrow. Yo. Bros. All right. I'll pivot. Dude. Guys, all right. I got a text this morning. It's like, hey, Opti, Matt Cole's coming on today. I'm like, all right, cool, dope. Like, this is awesome. Told me the wrong date. Bro. Bro. What are you doing? Oh, man. Opti, when you going to start selling gas masks? Soon. No, I have something that is, it really made me think of Bitcoin. So let me see. Let me pull it up here real quick. So I saw this morning. And you guys know I'm not the biggest AI guy, and I'm not going to play the clip. I'm just going to I'm not a thinker. I'm a doer. All right. Side note. I never look at my schedule. I need the team to keep me informed on the schedule. And bro, like, why do I pay these guys? Hey, yo. Anyways, I saw this before the show, and this is Sam Altman, and he's talking about AI. But obviously, I'm a Bitcoiner. Everything I see reminds me of Bitcoin. So there's this clip, I guess, and it says Sam Altman admits he was wrong on AI's timeline and says society and the economy will adapt more slowly. Obviously, this made me think of the Bitcoin adoption curve and how Bitcoin adoption takes place, and I guess put simply, how slow it feels throughout this process. So it goes, quote, I thought when we got to GPT-4, which is back in 2023, that very quickly after that, there was going to be much more disruption. Software businesses up for grabs right away than it turned out to be. I think I was wrong about a few things, but one in terms of the speed. The economy just has so much inertia. People keep doing the same things, buying from the same companies, wanting to use their tools the same way. I think this is actually a positive in many ways, and it's going to make this big transition go smoother and slower. I'm grateful for it. But it means we've all been too ambitious on timelines. Even with this incredible technology, society and the economy will adapt more slowly. Now, obviously, if you are on the internet at all, you understand that there is two revolutionary technologies playing out at the same time. Obviously, one is Bitcoin, the other one is AI. Now, even though I'm not the biggest AI, bull, I also acknowledge that AI is going to be with us. Like we have AI, maybe there is a lot of hype in AI. But again, reading this, it did make me think about Bitcoin and how Bitcoin adoption happened. Like even this first sentence here, where'd it go? Even this, I thought when we got to GPT-4, that very quickly there was going to be much more disruption. I thought the same thing when Bitcoin hit 100K. I thought when we hit 100K, it was like, oh, dude, the masses, the normies are going to want to buy Bitcoin. We hit 100K and people were still like asleep at the wheel. We got to 126 or whatever, and the OGs dumped on our heads. And interesting that Eric Balkunis in that clip earlier did pick up on I believe it was Jordy Visor. Jordy Visor's, I believe it was him, essay on Bitcoin's IPO moment, which was once we got to 100K, that was essentially the moonshot for a lot of OGs. And they either one started to sell some of their Bitcoin to realize their profits, or two, it looked like sales, but they transferred their Bitcoin into the ETFs for various reasons. And that's why we saw the aggressive sell-off above 100K. Also, let's factor in the fact that there was a quote Binance glitch that essentially liquidated the entire market and really started to kick the dominoes for the current bear market. But at 100K, 125K, I remember all of us thinking, and I remember you guys in the chat also being like, yo, at like what point do people start FOMOing into Bitcoin? And we're like, dude, I thought it was going to happen now. Maybe at 150K. We never got to 150K, right? So connecting this idea, Sam Altman, one of the insiders in AI, obviously you can make a less or maybe a more cynical analysis of this video, which is basically like, we're about to see, we're on the verge of seeing a couple of AI company IPOs. And maybe this is him kind of backtracking on the overselling and the hype of AI, because obviously if he's trying to sell his company, he can't be too crazy, or at least, go public. He can't be too crazy. Now he's a public CEO, and so he's going to have to pull back his rhetoric. He can't oversell things. You can make the case that is one of the reasons why he's saying this. But again, let's think about the adoption of Bitcoin. Like at what point, at what price level? Because look, that's most likely how this is going to play out. Obviously, it's a non-zero chance that there could be other factors for people adopting Bitcoin. But for the most part, it's going to be Bitcoin hits a certain price. I mean, that's how I got into Bitcoin in 2017. Bitcoin hit a certain price. I was hearing about it everywhere. I heard about Bitcoin that day like 6 times. It was on the radio. I think it was on my Instagram. I saw it in the newspaper that day. I think it was I saw it on the TV, and then I finally sat down. I'm like, what is this Bitcoin thing? So I personally, that's how I found Bitcoin. Bitcoin hit a certain price. It was everywhere. It hit a new price, an important psychological price. I heard about it everywhere that day. And, the rest is history. But at what price is that from here on out? I don't know. I don't think it's going to be new all-time high per se, but probably around 150, maybe, higher in the 6 figures. But I do think this time around, when Bitcoin gets back to 100K, we will start to see a lot more interest. I don't think we're going to be seeing the FOMO play out exactly, but maybe it's further. Like if we do get an actual blow off top, and this is, I'm kind of sad that I don't have Matt Cole on today, but we'll talk about it tomorrow, because he's the only other person. Actually, I might have seen someone else talk about this, but I'm starting to think that this bull run is going to be absolutely massive. I really do believe it. And it's look, I'm a bull tard. All right. You know, for the guys that think they're dunking on me in the chat, they're like, you called 150K last year and you were wrong. It's like, I keep preemptively telling you that when we start ripping, I'm going to be so unbearably bullish that you probably shouldn't listen to my price predictions, because I'm going to get crazy. I'm going to be like, dude, we're going to 500K like tomorrow. We're going to, yeah, like I'm with Larry Fink. We're going to 700K this cycle. No, not 700K. I mean, that'd be nice, but that would be crazy. But I do think we are going to go higher than 150. I think we're going to go into the six figures. You know, Kent was on the other day and he's like, yeah, actually, it wasn't Kent. I think he might have told me off air. It wasn't him. It was someone else. Okay. It was someone else. Sorry, bro. I don't mean to dox you. You know, he very publicly is like, I don't like to do price predictions, but privately, but privately, he's like, yeah, dude, no, it wasn't him. Not Kent said this. Okay. His parody account said this on Twitter. He's like, yeah, I really think we're going to go to like 400K. I think this is going to be the biggest bull run we've seen in years. And I think the best example of this is essentially the business cycle chart that everyone's been throwing around, that we essentially hit all-time high based off two factors, which was the momentum of Trump embracing Bitcoin, and then obviously the ETF inflows. But when you're looking at the business cycle, it was just like a mid-cycle pump, and what we're seeing now is essentially like a mid-cycle correction, and that's actually what BlackRock's report said. Not only did they say you should add 1 to 2% to your 60-40 portfolio, but they looked at the current 50% drop, and they weren't really calling it a bear market. They were just calling it like a leverage repositioning, which, said another way, is just like a mid-cycle correction. Said another way is like super cycle. All right. Now, they didn't say super cycle. Now, I'm not saying it, but that is what they're implying. And that's what it looks like if you're looking at the ISM PMI or the business cycle chart, that we haven't seen expansion in the economy in the US. And therefore, it was almost a fluke that we got to 126K. And if that is playing out, now, obviously, like I said earlier, we look for patterns. You know, we look for narratives to explain the price actions of Bitcoin. But if there is a correlation, hold on, I see your comment, JP or IP. 1 second. But if there is a correlation here with the business cycle, obviously all of our charts are wrong. What's the saying? You know, all charts are wrong, but some of them are useful. So if the business cycle chart laid out on Bitcoin's price action is useful, like it will eventually break, but if it is a useful chart to look at right now, and we do continue to expand, the economy continues to expand, and we get a real bull market, a real blow off top, then I think we're going so much higher than everyone is predicting. Everyone's falling into like diminishing returns, bro. Like Bitcoin's big number, therefore it's harder to get big number. And I'm like, what world are you looking at? No one's using Bitcoin. I mean, look at the freaking mempools. It's like it's dead. We can still get 1 sat fees. Like, what are we talking about? This is crazy. I never thought we'd get 1 sat fees at 80K. I was expecting to, you know, pay more money. Where it feels like we're going to be at 100K and we're going to get 1 sat fees. It's like insane. And very few people are actually hodlers of Bitcoin. Very few people are completely all in on Bitcoin. Once we start to see that watershed moment, that real waterfall of capital flow into Bitcoin, which I think we're on the verge of. I think the last 2 years of the institutions kind of building the foundations, building the products, building the ETFs, getting a little bit of trickle of capital flowing into these products and ETFs and Bitcoin treasuries. It is proving the use case of Bitcoin to the skeptics. And if more people start to understand, one, Bitcoin isn't going away, and two, there is an actual need for Bitcoin in your portfolio, and we start to see real capital find its way into Bitcoin. Like, I don't think diminishing returns is playing. Like, I just don't believe in it. It's hard for me to, but it's because I'm bullish. I'm a bulltard. It's just, it doesn't fit with my, my Bitcoin view of how this plays out. Again, what's it? Occam's razor. Is that the one? Or is it Hanlon's? Whatever. Simple answer. Like, no one's using Bitcoin. Or further, no one really even understands Bitcoin. No one's talking about Bitcoin. And once everyone catches the FOMO, again, maybe it's because I'm a 2017 Bitcoiner and I remember that time and I'm just like chasing the dragon. I'm like, dude, I'm a dopamine junkie. I'm a price junkie because of those days. I'm like, it can't be over. Can't. It just can't. I need it. I need it. I'm like, dude, we haven't seen adoption of Bitcoin at all. We've barely seen any capital come into Bitcoin. Now Bitcoin's big enough that it can't absorb a lot of capital. Therefore, more capital attracts more capital. It's the Veblen good idea. As Bitcoin gets more expensive, as the market cap gets bigger, that attracts more capital and people willing to pay more for this very valuable thing. Now, obviously, there's still a lot of skeptics out there that don't believe Bitcoin has any value. And obviously, we understand their bias. But all it takes is one thing for people's minds to shift. Whether that is, what a lot of the fiat doomers are saying, whether that is an economic collapse, which I don't necessarily think needs to happen, but that could be one of the factors. Another hyperinflationary scenario in a first world country, in a Western country, we can see Bitcoin explode overnight. Whether it's what the Treasury is doing with the bond market right now that fundamentally, snaps all of the bond investors out of the illusion of saving in bonds is the safe bet, and thus going down the risk curve. If you can't invest in the safe thing, if there is no certainty, and you embrace the chaos, then you go further down the risk curve. It's like 101 investing stuff. That could be it. Maybe it's Bitcoin just ripping up to 100K, 150K. And then we finally get a 2017 FOMO era, but exponentially bigger. It could get crazy, guys. It could be absolutely nuts. And I know a lot of us Bitcoiners, we've been here for so long, we're super bullish, but I think we still have a lot of PTSD. We're only monkeys after all. And if you slam the cage in my face so many times, I never think I can escape. It's like that one, actually, this is an old one. You guys have all seen it. That one video, it's like a Twitter video or Instagram video where there was like a bear in a cage, or the bear was in the cage and it had, a chain on him. And then they took the chain off and he still walks in like a figure eight in what was his cage. I really feel like that is how Bitcoiners are thinking right now of the price action, because since 2021, we haven't really seen anything explosive happen in the price. Yeah, we got to, 70K in 2021. And we got 100K around the Trump election night. And we got 126, a new all-time high in October of 2025. And we have been seeing a pattern of diminishing returns. 2017 was like a 20x. I think 2021 was like a 7x or something like that. And then 2025 was like a 5x or something like that. So it does look like, yeah, there is diminishing returns. But I don't believe. I'm a free bird up here, The cage has has been destroyed. Maybe my mind is a little too open sometimes. And maybe I do choose to be delusionally optimistic about things. And yes, I lean towards being a bulltard. But guys, I'd much rather be wrong bullish than be wrong bearish. I'd much rather be like, yo, we're going to 6 figures plus, higher than everyone thinks we're going to do this cycle, and it doesn't go as high as I thought it was, versus like it's going to 37K or whatever BS people are saying. We are bulltards. We will maintain being bulltards. I will smoke my own hopium. Smoke my own supply here. Dude, we're going to rip. All right. We are ripping. Too much. Java. Yo, Cotton 4K. Hey, yo, Java. Okay. Oh, you're funny. So true, though. So true. All right, guys. All right. Metcalfe's law say bigger number brings bigger numbers. The network effect looks at the internet adoption versus Bitcoin chart. The deep state gets it, dude. That's what I'm saying, bro. Everyone's wrong about, oh, bigger number means it needs bigger number to go higher. Like, no, dude. Bigger number means bigger number can enter into Bitcoin. It's like, dude, Bitcoin is smaller than Apple. Like, I love Apple, you know, but Bitcoin is way bigger than one corporation. Is Apple still the biggest company in the world right now? I think so, right? If Bitcoin is smaller than the biggest corporation in the world, like, we have so much room to fly. We are done with the bears, all right? No more bear talk allowed in the Simply Bitcoin chat. Yo, mods. We got to ban the bears. It is time. We are flying. It is bull market Opti. It is bull market Simply Bitcoin. I might have to literally kick off Nico for forever until it gets bullish. We are bull posting commence as of now. If you are caught bear posting, you are getting sent to the gulags. We are bull posting all caps like Odell used to do. It is now, all right? We will manifest the Bitcoin price to go up. All right, guys. All right. Anyway, ban the bears. It's over. Bear market blues are done. We are listening to heavy bull techno. Pump it up. Pump it up on repeat 16 hours a day. Bull posting only. Innovation bull, sorry. I was misinformed. Reverse Opti coming. Matt's coming on tomorrow. My scheduler told me before the show he was coming on today. I didn't verify on my schedule. My schedule is now saying he's coming tomorrow. So forgive me for that. I was misinformed, but he's coming tomorrow. Okay. All right, dude. I will see you tomorrow, guys. I hope you have a good rest of your day. I'll be live tomorrow around 12:40. I'll probably start a little early tomorrow. Maybe I'll start depending on if there's a big story. So I might start a little early so that I can get through everything. If I have a lot to talk about tomorrow, I might start at 12:30 because I do want to get through a lot of stuff. And when I have a guest, they come on around 1:30 Eastern time. So sometimes I need a little extra time, to rant and go crazy. And I don't like the guests to sit around. So we'll say 12:40 tomorrow, but don't be surprised if I do start a little bit early tomorrow. On that note, have a good rest of your day, guys. I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you are having a good life. I hope you're getting a workout in, getting some sun, getting, a walk in at the very least. I hope you're eating some good food. Wait, guys, at what price point do we stop eating ramen? At what price point is it ribeyes every night? Ribeye sounds so good right now. I'm still eating ground beef. I eat ground beef, dude. Bear market, you eat ground beef. Bull market, you eat the ribeyes. When do we whip out the ribeyes every night? That's what I'm asking. Anyways, call your loved ones. You know, that's why I didn't tell you guys yesterday. I kind of mentioned it. That's why I took Friday off. I went home. I saw my mom, my brothers, saw the fam. All right. You can call your, you know, maybe you can't take a break. Call your loved ones. Of course, stack some Bitcoin, secure that Bitcoin. Chill out. It's bull market. It's bull market time. Don't argue with the bears. We will not feed the bears, okay? We're pumping. Bull market comment. All right, guys. Peace out. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good rest of your day. Until that time tomorrow. Peace.
Today's episode was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.